Hello and welcome to another episode of Cake Fight Presents The Making of Kaleidoscope. I'm writer, director, producer Paige Feldman, and this week, as every week, I'm taking you inside my process of making my debut feature film. We're going from idea to premiere in real time. So last week, I gave you the first quarter of my reactions to the first draft of Kaleidoscope, and today we are back for round 2 of what's going to be a 4-part series of these reactions. Finally, in this section, starting to like some things, but I'm starting to question a few things too, including whether I should kill off a character. I didn't intend to do an evil laugh there, but I think it really worked. Before we dive in, I just want to say that if you haven't watched part 1 of this series, I would strongly encourage you to click up here and go watch part 1 first before you watch part 2. I do a decent job of explaining scenarios in the first video, which I don't do so much in this one because I initially thought that I would be able to get through my entire reactions in one video. However, after making 2 now 20-minute videos of these reactions, I still have 2 hours of footage left. And these 2 20-minute videos were made from a total of additional 2 hours of footage. Obviously, not getting through this in 1 week. We're getting through it in 4. And I hope that this is helpful to everyone who's watching, just to see somebody write something and not be super thrilled with it and continue to go on. And now, without further ado, I will roll those titles and take you from here, the editing suite, back to the dining room table where I will be reading from page 65, where we left off last week, to the narrative midpoint of this 263-page first draft on page 123. Hey y'all, I am back. I am full of leftover Thai curry. I got some pineapple curry last night for dinner with some chicken and a bunch of veggies. Come to think of it, I might have eaten all of the pineapple last night? Okay, never mind. Doesn't matter. Back here, ready to continue on the work of reading through this 263-page screenplay. Where we last left off, I was on page 65, and now we continue. On page 66, I'm realizing that this is where I committed fully to Zach being a himbo about a script that he's reading, which isn't very good. Zach says, I think it's a piece for this French-Canadian dude, like the next Yorgos Lanthimos. Jonah says, you don't even speak French. Zach, neither does the non-French-Canadian half of Canada. Jonah, that's not right. The non-French-Canadian half of Canada. I hope this comes across as funny and cute because I think it is. Zach's very much a himbo here, and I need to kind of transfer that over into the first quarter of this script. Moving on. There's a cat drinking water behind me. He's so cute. Back to our regularly scheduled reading. On page 70, we have another Iris scene. Since I do a terrible job of giving context on who Iris is, here's a bit of backstory. She is an app developer who hires Lee to do some legal work on her app, write some terms of service, and through this app, which is a storytelling app, Lee rediscovers her love of photography. Iris also has a history with Devin. They were friends in college, kind of peripheral. They joined a few of the same extracurricular activities. So that is who Iris is. Hopefully this clears it up. And okay, back to me in the past. Something that I've been struggling with mentally is that Iris really doesn't have much of a place in this story beyond being in service to Lee's story, and I wanted to give her and Devin a bit of a love story. I'm also struggling, frankly, with the idea that maybe Devin is taking up too much real estate in this script. I wonder if I need to kill him and make Lee's thing be grief and Jonah's grief be more intense because he was the one driving the car, so it was like he killed him. The issue that I'm having with all of this, though, is that that's a lot. That's a lot for a romantic comedy. I mean, this movie is already about anxiety and insecurity and mental health in a real way. I don't know if more tragedy would actually work for it, because I don't want this to be a dramedy. I want this to be a romantic comedy, but with not gravitas, but depth and grounded in reality. And I'm wondering if I need to kill off Devin. I've been wondering that since I stopped writing, but reading this now, there's a lot of stuff that I think could be excised if Devin were just dead in the present day. So it's definitely a question I'm asking myself. Do I need to kill off a character? And I hate killing people in my scripts. I've never killed anyone in real life. I wouldn't want to do that either. But in my scripts, I hate killing people because death, in my estimate, tends to be a cheap way to make a play for people's emotions, and it tends to create easy motivation when I think keeping someone alive is usually more complex and interesting. So I'm stuck and I'm struggling with this. It's not a question I'm gonna have an answer for today because I am just reading through this whole script. That's all I'm doing today, but it's something that I need to keep in mind, and that I'm leaning more and more towards maybe Devin has to go. We'll find out though. We'll find out later. I'm gonna keep reading page 70. Let's do this. So the other thing about killing Devin is that it would do good things for my budget, because it would make one less character I'm going to have to continue to see in the real world and versus in the time loop. It'll help budget. So again, another consideration, because we're actually making the thing. It's not just a script in theory. This is going to be a movie.
Maybe I was confused, or did you feel it too? In that room, suddenly just felt like it was me and you. 'Cause I forgot about you.
But here's the complication with killing off Devin. If he's gone, does Lee just stay and grieve? Why doesn't she go on the internship? Maybe she does stay and grieve. Maybe she just goes into a hole. But that's kind of where Jonah goes too, and so it'll be the same journey for both of them, coming back from despair. And I like the idea of two different kinds of despair. And the other thing is that we don't get a fun Devin and Iris sort of romance, and I love those secondary romances. Those are really fun for me to write and fun for me to watch. Like Moonstruck is one of my favorite movies. Every single character in the background is going through some kind of love story, and it makes the movie really special to me and really fun to watch and rewatch. I would love to include more background romance in Kaleidoscope, but in order to do that, I need actual background characters. So again, I know I shouldn't be making a decision about this now, but I'm still thinking about it even as I'm reading. I'm on page 75, and it definitely feels like we're at the point where we should almost be done with Act 1. At least I'm feeling like there are some repeated beats here, so I'm not finding gold in every page. And that's promising, because I know what work I have ahead of me. So here's something that's not about whether Devin should die. Jonah is in this scene on page 78 sitting outside Zach's agent's office while Zach and his agent have a meeting, and Jonah is making bad jokes at the receptionist, kind of practicing a little bit, and as I told you, I'm full of Thai food, so I'm like having the post-lunch yawns. So there's this thing that I do sometimes that I really enjoy, which is sort of adding a tag at the end of a scene that makes it go on a little bit longer, adds a joke, and kind of disrupts the expected rhythm. So I'm on page 78, and before this there was a couple pages of Zach and Francesca, his agent, saying hello, Francesca saying hi to Jonah, and Jonah's asked her to rep him multiple times and she always declines. And then Zach and Francesca go into the office, leaving Jonah outside. And that's kind of, the scene feels like it's over there, but then we linger, and Jonah starts making these terrible jokes, trying to get Francesca's assistant Eve to laugh. I like the stretching out of this. It's fun. Add some personality, a bit of a breather. Once I revise, it'll be a more rapid pace. And so this drawn out little end tag, about half a page, is going to be really helpful to keep the rhythm fresh. And my battery's about to run out, so I'm going to change that and then continue reading at page 78. All right, so we're back. Battery's full. Page 78. Keeping it rolling. In the third, maybe fourth time loop right now, page 82. This stuff should have been happening in the second time loop at the very latest. To me, though, this is good news. It means that there's stuff to clear out. And the stuff that's on page 82 here, it's all Lee and Jonah planning what they're going to do. So creating a plan for how to fix what's happened to them in the past and maybe get out of the time loop. They're not going to be able to, spoiler alert, but they're trying. And so this trying needs to happen. He's almost, I think, set up at the end of Act 1. Yeah. All right, continue the read. That's interesting. On page 83, as I was calling out Jonah earlier for being kind of optimistic one, I actually have Lee call him out on it on page 83. You're optimistic about everything but yourself. It's disgusting. All right. Maybe I do have a plan. Sometimes that happens. I surprise myself. I think, oh, what am I doing? That was weird. I should definitely do ABC. And then 3 pages later, ABC happens. So much about revising is learning to trust your past self. And I'm trying. All right, so here's the deal. On page 89, something has been dropped in that I definitely 100% thought I had added in from the beginning. And maybe I did, I just didn't notice it, but their names are in caps right now. And it's the idea, there are 2 people who are attending this party who I'm calling the Karaoke Twins. The Karaoke Twins dominate the karaoke microphone the entire party and sing terrible duets. With music clearance issues, I'm not sure how that will actually work, but Karaoke Twins apparently only show up on page 89, like a third of the way through. Bonkers. The Karaoke Twins come back a lot because I thought it was a fun concept. I mean, it's a third of the way through, so it is technically towards the beginning, but also it's page 89. It's amazing how your perspective about what happens at the beginning versus the middle versus the end distorts as you write and as you draft, especially when you're drafting like I do, which is just blinders on, full steam ahead, get the words on the paper no matter what. Okay, so page 94. Remember at the beginning I shared Lee's terrible exposition voice. Page 94, I think I'm getting I'm getting Lee's voice. There's a rhythm to it here. I like it. She feels like a normal person. So here's a bit of a compare and contrast, if you will, from the very beginning, that thing that I read earlier. Devin turns his back on Lee and she snaps. Jonah sees it in her eyes but doesn't say anything. Lee, do what? Support me? Tell me it's okay if I go for my dreams? Because it's happening, Devin, whether you approve or not. I'm quitting. I'm going off on my own to be the woman I know I can be. Like, what in the corny hell is that? And now on page 93 and 94, Devin runs up to Lee and is saying, hey, you're going to leave me. You're taking this job. You're not even going to tell me. And Devin says, you left a browser tab open. And Lee says, I don't leave. I used to leave browser tabs open. She actually says a lot less here than she says at the very, very beginning. But I think that is what works. It creates the idea that she's an internal character. Jonah also asks her to dance a few pages before that, on page 91. And she says, my plan wasn't to draw attention to ourselves, so I don't know where this dancing mishigas came from. And adding a little bit of Yiddish in there, it highlights that she's Jewish. And that line, it feels like Lee when she's harried and can't be bothered to keep that Ice Queen front on. So I think finally, 90 pages in, I've gotten a handle on Lee. So we don't have a Lee problem in terms of her dialogue. We do have a Lee problem in terms of how to center her better in the story. At least I know that I know how to write Lee again. Because I did not spend all 36 questions that lead to love trying to get her voice down for it to just elude me in the draft. So page 96 here. One thing, not really a runner in a technical sense, a runner is a joke, especially in a sitcom, that is not a separate plot, but is just a recurring joke that evolves throughout the show. This isn't a joke really, but it is a thread that keeps going through, is that Lee has very specific opinions on whether Jonah's funny. And she doesn't like all of the self-deprecating stuff that he writes. And right here on page 96 is the first thing she laughs at. He says it spontaneously, but he's always kind of writing jokes as he's talking. And when I go through the script in more depth, especially once I've gotten it down to a good length, I need to hone in on what kinds of jokes that Lee is drawn towards and their characteristics, so there is some continuity between all that. But here on page 96, this is the first joke of Jonah's that Lee really gets a kick out of, and he says, I can't tell if you're boring or anxious. And he says that to Lee. I can't tell if you're boring or anxious. It's like I'm looking into a mirror. And Lee laughs. I enjoy that joke too.
You grew old in suburbia, where pretty demons.
Also on page 99 is the introduction of a potential maybe former love interest for Jonah named Stephanie, who I don't believe I've ever gone back to at all. I do like the idea of having Jonah have some sort of romantic past despite all the self-deprecating jokes that he does, because, I mean, at the very least he's Zach, whatever his last name is, brother, and probably get a groupie to be interested in him, and he does have a great personality. But I like the idea of Jonah being, even though he's not a heartthrob, a sexualized person, in the same way that Lee has a romantic past, to just make it seem like they're actually 35 years old and not these fake, weird 35-year-olds who have huge hang-ups about their bodies that have prevented them from being in any relationship whatsoever, even a one-night stand. So that shouldn't be the case. We're sex positive here. Everybody's beautiful. Everyone can find a match, and whether that match is for a few hours or a few years or a few lifetimes, depending on if you believe in reincarnation. But I do like the idea of giving Jonah a romantic backstory. However, at 263 pages right now, I don't know how much romantic backstory I can fit in there, but a one-off line, or maybe him deciding to dance with somebody who is super cute and who he seems to have a history with. I mean, that's worth 15 seconds of screen time, especially if we're gonna have a lot of party goers who are gonna be on the loop on repeat. Give everybody something different to do. Anywho. Another check in the Let's Kill Devin column is just how much of a jerk I've made him. Even in this time loop, he just like insults Iris in this one interaction. That's not really a point of the column, I'm just amazed at how terrible he is right now. Oh. Yay, it's something that like is truly delighting me, and it's one of Lee's lines. Actually, this whole scene is fantastic. I am really loving it. I just started. So we're on page 105, and Lee and Jonah are trying to fix things still, trying to make it so that Devin doesn't get in the car accident and that everything's okay in the future. And Jonah is bombing on stage at this party. His stage fright is creating huge problems for him. He's having a giant panic attack, because even though he is traveling into the past, he's still taking all the baggage from the future with him. Zach and Devin are trying to talk Jonah down and saying like, dude, go on, come on down. Like, you can get off, you can move, but Jonah's just tunnel vision, can't see, can't hear. And Lee jumps up on stage and puts her arm around him and just says like, listen, it's okay. And that they're in this crazy situation together. They've got each other's backs. After that, Lee says to him, who do you want gone first? These looky-loos, meaning the crowd, or the least helpful men on the planet? She inclines her head to Zach and Devin. This snarky brashness, this is the Lee that I love, that I want to write, that I want to keep writing. And so I've starred this line. I'm actually going to double star it to really emphasize that this is the energy I want to bring into Lee as I continue to rewrite.
Be a weekend lover. Yeah, I'ma be the best damn lover you got. I wanna mess up your covers. I don't wanna meet your mother.
Something I've noticed that something I've noticed that Jonah has done in the past, I guess, 20 pages or so is use some outdated slang. I'm on page 112. He uses hunky-dory, and then back a few pages, he also uses make time with your girl. Like, I'm not trying to make time with your girl, Devin. I like that character trait, and I think I would like to continue incorporating it, so I'm gonna star hunky-dory right here on page 112 before I move on. Also on page 112, and the scene before it, is Lee and Jonah having some actual banter over the phone in the real world as they try to plan what's going to happen next. And I think this is some of the first real banter we're getting between them. The Lee helping Jonah off the stage in the time loop was also some of the first really good interaction that felt very, maybe warm and tender. As I restructure, I need to note that and remember that part, because that's an important beat in the romantic comedy, when, especially enemies to lovers, when the enemies come together in pursuit of a common goal. So we're getting, page 112, we are getting into the good stuff. The romance, the banter, all the things that I love. Page 115, more Karaoke Twins. See, I told you, I love them. And get some water, BRB. Big water bottle. Ready to keep going? Page 119.
Show me what you can do. Make a move. The way my hands feel on your body. The way we're dancing in the dark with every move.
Page 122, more Karaoke Twins.
The way my lips feel on your body. The way we're moving in the dark with every breath we take, you're falling.
All right, so on page 123, we are at the midpoint, I believe. We're at the point where Jonah and Lee do everything right to reverse the horrible things that happened the night of the party, no accident, and yet it didn't work. So we're about at the midpoint here. We're about at the midpoint of this 263-page script, which tracks, but also I was definitely thinking that this midpoint was going to come about 10 pages after the actual page number halfway point of this script, which means that there's a lot of stuff after and there would have been anyway, but there is more bloat after this point than I expected. And that, my friends, is where I will leave you for this week. Before I go, I want to give a final tally of where we are on the should we kill Devin or not issue, because this is something that will recur and I will continue to ruminate on it more and more and more, if you can believe it, throughout the course of the remaining half of this script. So we are tied at 2-2 right now. In the pros column is the fact that killing Devin early will help with the budget. Devin will be a character only in the time loop, and I won't have to worry about him or the actor who portrays him in terms of paying not only the cast, but makeup, costumes, etc., and the added cost of any sort of assistive devices that we need to bring in to make Devin's injury feel real and grounded. The second thing in the pro column of killing Devin is that he's mean. I made him really mean. Like, it's kind of a fake pro for killing him because it's good to have some mean characters, but being mean almost feels like a symptom of me not quite knowing where he fits in the story. Making someone deliberately mean without giving them a real purpose feels like a similar manipulation to killing somebody off, where you're finding a cheap way to create an audience reaction that's not really grounded in a story. And then on the con side of killing Devin off, first of all, it's going to create a pretty big similarity in terms of the mental state of both Lee and Jonah. They'll both be grieving. Obviously, Jonah will feel some more responsibility for Devin's death because he was the driver in the car accident. But Lee will also probably feel some survivor's guilt for arguing with Devin and causing him to leave. And so Lee and Jonah's grief being almost a mirror of each other, it doesn't create the most interesting dynamic. And then secondly is the fact that Iris and Devin are supposed to, it's not in this draft yet, but they're supposed to, my intention was that they would be a sort of background romance and be a nice additional story to play with. So we're tied at 2-2 with should we kill Devin? And we will see more of these reasons for killing Devin or for keeping him alive next week. If you like this video, if you found it helpful, if you enjoy seeing my process, please hit the like button. And to make sure that you know when this next part is coming, hit subscribe. I have new videos every Wednesday, 8:30 a.m. Pacific. So if you really don't want to subscribe and you just want to keep abreast, just set an alarm, I guess. I don't know. Thank you all so much for watching. And I will see you next week for more on the Making of Kaleidoscope.